Lay out the material using the pencil marks on the inside of the deck. Make sure it is square and the vinyl is flush with the lines. Also, check the end to make sure there's enough material to get to the bottom of the 1x2, plus a little bit extra to trim off when we're doing our finish work. Once you have checked both ends, adjust it one final time. Check the outside edge while standing on the vinyl so it doesn't move, and check again that there is enough material for the outside edge. Next, lay out the second piece. With it in place, flip the inside edge back onto itself by about a foot to allow enough room to slide the material all the way to the wall. It is critical at this point that everything stays in place, and once the seam is lined up, the vinyl doesn't move again. Check that the ends are long enough to cover the 1x2 and that nothing has moved. Make sure that the two pieces are even. The next thing to do is line up the seam. You should make a little bit more seam than you'll use. It'll be trimmed back later. Leave the seam about 1 1/4 inches. Use a piece of L flashing as a guide to make sure that it is constant or consistent all the way along. Shimmy the vinyl a little bit to get the wrinkles out, and keep checking as you go to ensure that the vinyl hasn't moved. It's important to take your time here to make sure the seams have not moved, as this can cause a major problem when heat welding. The seam is now 1 1/4 inches, and the finished seam should be 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch. Now trim it back to compensate for any movement. This will allow a straight-looking seam that has consistent width. Before we get to our gluing sequence, put a couple of staples into the vinyl so it doesn't move once we have our seams lined up. Drive a staple through both layers of vinyl. This will be heat welded later to seal it. We're going to glue this deck in 3 parts. The inside half first, or just a little bit more than half, the outside half, and then the 2 center panels. Start off by pulling the inside panel back until it is past the seam. Pull it back so that about 2/3 of the panel is actually exposed. Stand on the seam as long as you can to ensure that it doesn't move. Flatten the vinyl and remove all wrinkles. We're now ready to start gluing the 3 main pieces. On the deck, we should have WeatherDeck approved contact cement and a medium or heavyweight paint roller on a heavy-duty roller cage with an extension handle. Roll the paint roller in the contact cement, shaking loose any excess glue. Apply it to the wood surface first. Starting in the center, glue right up to the wall and up to the edge of the deck. Make sure the glue is spread as even as you can get it. Next, glue the vinyl. Again, start in the center and glue to the edge of the vinyl at the edge of the deck. Putting a little pressure on the roller on the backstroke will help even out the glue. Take the glue along the top to within about 1 inch of the finished edge. That will facilitate the application of a bead of caulking that will seal the vinyl. Wait until the glue is sticky to both the vinyl and the deck surface before placing the material. Start in the center of the panel and lay the vinyl in towards the inside wall. You'll create a wave effect with the straight point going into the center, creating a wedge, pushing it all the way into the inside wall. Take the plastic spreader and go over the area, making sure that you have contact bonding the vinyl to the deck. Along the inside edge, make sure that the vinyl is pushed in as far as it'll go. Use your fingers to push it down so that it will make a 90-degree point, and use the spreader to make sure that the vinyl is pushed into that crease tightly. Repeat the process with the outside piece. Pull the outside edge all the way in again, so about 2/3 of it is flipped back on itself. Lay it out flat and ensure that there are no ripples in it, and then repeat the gluing process. On the outside edge, you should glue to within 1/2 inch of the outside edge, and be careful not to get glue onto the finished surface of the vinyl. On the outside edge, where the flashing is going, it's important to have glue right to the trim point on the deck. You'll get better at this with practice, but to ensure that you don't glue where you shouldn't, mask off the outside 3/4 of an inch with masking tape. Once gluing is complete, lay out the vinyl the same as before. With the outside piece in place, move to the center panels. Pull the staples out, flip the 2 panels back, and put a piece of scrap vinyl on the outside edge. Rolling it back, make sure that you expose the glue underneath. It's very important that you see the glue that is on the back of the vinyl as well as the glue that is on the back of the wood. Make sure that it is exposed all the way along, and if it pulls any glue off the wood, then we're going to reglue that later. Do the same on the outside. Slide that scrap piece in so it is centered on the seam. Now we're ready to glue. We'll glue these two vinyl panels and the wood in one section. Remember, the inside panel coming from the house out is the one that we're going to put the seam on. Leave a 3/4 inch strip here that will not have any glue on it. It's critical that you don't get any glue onto the seam because the glue will act as a barrier and it will not let you heat weld that vinyl together. It may look like it's stuck together, but in about a month, that seam would pull apart. You may wish to take a 3/4 inch strip of masking tape to mask off the outside corner and along the edge to keep the glue off the vinyl. That will be the top side of your seam once we get those two panels in place. At this end, you'll see now right away why we've put this scrap piece of vinyl on the outside edge. It allows us to glue right up to that edge without having to worry about getting anything on the vinyl underneath. It's important at this point that we don't miss that edge and finish it up completely. We are ready to start laying our two panels in the same manner as before. Go over the seam with your hand and rub it really well. The heat from your hand will help it stay down. Take the center of the inside panel, pull the center of the inside panel towards you. Watch your feet so you're not getting scuffs on the vinyl. Now at this point we normally trim and heat weld our seam. The deck is not waterproof until we heat weld the seam, so the sooner we do it, the better. Once we heat weld the seam and flip our inside edge up and run a couple of staples along the inside wall, the deck is about 99% waterproof.